Welcome to Professor Pincushion. In this tutorial, we're going to be doing Butterick 5879. So you're going to want to make sure that you pick up this envelope so we can work on it together. We're going to be tackling Dress C from this envelope. Make sure you pick up the right size, and the size is listed above the barcode right here. So now let's take a look at an example of the dress we'll be making. This is a line dress that uses a soft, lightweight fabric for the outer shell. You can see in this case I am using a chiffon. The neckline and hemline are outlined with a flounce. It also has barrel cuff sleeves and a gathered waistline, which would look perfect with the purchase belt around the waist. Now let's take a look at our measurement chart. The most important thing when making your own clothes is making sure that you're doing the right size. So you always want to consult the body measurement chart, and in this particular case it's located on the envelope flap, which is right at the top. So you're going to see the sizes listed here on the top row, and then underneath are the body measurements. So you're going to want to measure your bust, waist, and hip, and these measurements are in inches here. And then you're going to take your measurements and try to line them up in a column. The column that best fits you, that is going to be your size. If you look at the back of the pattern envelope, you're going to see what type of fabrics they recommend and also what other notions we need besides fabric. You'll see here at the top, they have fabrics, and it says it's designed for soft, lightweight woven fabrics such as organza, chiffon, etc. Now this is for the outer shell of the dress, so the main fabric. There's also a lining, so in addition to this, you'll also need lining fabric. We have notions, and it's broken up depending on the view that you're doing. So we're doing dress C, so I can go ahead and ignore that which is under A and B and just focus on C. So in addition to fabric, I'm going to need one 22-inch zipper and hooks and eyes. Once you know your size and what type of fabric you're going to use, you can then figure out how much fabric you're going to need. So you're going to look at this top box, which is broken up again by view. Since we're doing dress C, we can just focus on this part of it and ignore this up here for A and B. Now you want to look at the bolt of your fabric or the fabric information tag, because that is going to tell you the width of the fabric that you are purchasing. Commonly, it's either 45 or 60 inches in width. Once you know that, then you can split it up even more. So if, for example, I'm doing size 12, and again, the sizes are listed up here at the top, everything below this 12 is going to relate to that size. So if I'm doing size 12, this is all going to relate to me. But I'm only doing dress C, and let's say my fabric is 60 inches in width. So I go across the 60-inch row and I go down the column 12, and that tells me for 60 inches I'm going to need 3.5 yards of fabric. So that tells me how much I'm going to be purchasing of my main fabric. Then for lining, again we have a lining in this dress, they only have it for 45 inches. So if I do the same thing, going across this row, going down 12, I'm going to need 4 yards of lining, plus we're also going to need some sew-in interfacing, so this is the non-fusible kind, and the same thing, so we're going to need 3/8 of a yard of sew-in interfacing. The great thing about this pattern is they also customize the pattern pieces in order to fit your particular cup size. So we need to do a few additional measurements in order to know which particular pattern pieces we're going to need to cut out, and this is going to be found on the first page of the directions. You're going to see something that looks like this. All you need to do is, number one, you're going to take a measurement of your bust, which you should already have. This is the fullest part of your bust line. And you're going to make sure that it's all going even across the front and even across the back as well. You can go ahead and write that down. Number two is going to be the high bust. So this is the number 2. It's above the number 1, and it's going to be right where the top of your armpit is, so where your arm meets your side. You're going to put that measurement down as well. Then you're going to write down what the difference is between these two measurements. Whatever that is, you're going to look here. So whatever the difference is, if it's 1 inch, then you're going to be the AB cup size. And they also tell you what pattern pieces those are. So it's really handy in order to figure it out. Now we can get down to the business of figuring out what pattern pieces we need to cut out for our dress. And you'll see up here, we have some pieces that are very similar. 1, 2, 3, they all pretty much look the same. The difference is you have your cup size up here. So if I'm doing C cup, then I would just cut out 2 and I wouldn't have to worry about cutting out 1 and 3. Now these numbers that you see in these diagrams, they match up to the same numbers we have on the list below it, which tell us what the pattern piece is and which view it is for. So I'm going to scroll down here. Now you'll notice bodice front AB, AB cup. This AB does not relate to the cup size. This is for what dress view you're doing. So if you're doing dress A or dress B, then you're going to cut out one of these bodice fronts, but then you just have to decide which cup size you're doing. So if you're doing a C cup, you would cut out number 2, but not 1 and 3. But I'm doing dress C, so I'm going to ignore all of these until I see one that says pattern BC. So here we go. This is for dress C. I'm going to put a check mark next to each one I need to cut out, because then it makes it a lot easier for when I go to the actual tissue paper finding the pattern pieces I need. So I don't have to remember, I can just refer to my checklist. Some of them do not have letters behind them. This means it's for all dresses, all views. So it doesn't matter if you're doing A or B or C, everybody's going to need to cut out the skirt front and the skirt back. So I'm going to go ahead and put a check mark here. Here again, we have the bodice front C, bodice front C, bodice front C. Once I see this, then I'm going to have to decide which cup size I'm doing, and I'm going to put a check mark next to it. Lastly, we have the bodice back C, neck flounce C, sleeve C, and cuff C. Once you have all your check marks, you can then pull out your tissue paper and search for the pattern pieces that you need. They make it really easy for you because the number that's in the pattern piece goes back to the same number on the list that we were just looking at. Also underneath, they have the name of the pattern and the view that it's for. Now when you're cutting out pattern pieces, sometimes you'll see a series of lines like this. Each line is a different size, and you can see the sizes because they're right below the line that they're pertaining to. So if I'm going to cut out, for example, a size 10, I'm going to cut out on the line above the size 10. Everything else is going to get cut off, and I'm just going to follow on this line. Now if we look at the bottom of the sleeve pattern, underneath here we just have a solid line. This means it's for all sizes. So everybody's going to cut out on that particular line. Now we also have notches, and you can see a notch right here. This is a single notch. This is how we fit certain pieces together and making sure that certain parts line up. So you always want to mark your notches. So you're either cutting inward or you're cutting outward like I did. We're going to do the same thing when we're cutting this out on our fabric. We're always going to mark the notch because it's very important later when we're putting our pieces together. This right here, this is a double notch. So these are just 2 of these single notches put together. And just for it's easier for me, so I can definitely see the difference between a single notch and a double notch, I kind of cut outward like I did, but then I just flatten the top. It just makes it a lot easier. After you cut out your pattern pieces, you can then consult the pattern suggestion layout. And this is just telling you how they suggest you lay out your pattern pieces to cut out your fabric in order to make the most of the fabric that they asked you to get. So we're going to look actually at page 2, which is the back of page 1, because that's where they're going to have dress C. So we only need to look at the dress C layout. And you'll see here that layouts are shown for D cup. What this means is in this layout, they're showing you piece number 14, which is the bodice for the D cup. Obviously, if you don't cut out a D cup, you're not going to have piece number 14. But they tell you here, if you're doing A, B, you're going to substitute piece 12 for piece 14. So you don't have to worry about, oh no, I didn't cut out a size 14. That's because you just take your size 12 and you put it where they have the size 14. And the same thing for the C cup. So we have a couple of different layouts here. It's actually split up by the width of the fabric. So I have 45, 45, and under here I have some 60 inches. So depending on the width of the fabric is the layout that you're going to look at. But since you see that there's 2 of each one, you also need to look at the size. So this 45 is for sizes 6 through 14. This is for sizes 16 through 22. So if I'm doing size 18 and I have 45-inch with fabric, then I'm going to look at this layout here. My fabric is actually 60 inches and I'm doing size 12. So I'm going to look at this layout. There's a couple of keys that we need to know. So F means it's on the fold, or there's a fold here in our fabric. S is the salvage, so that's the end of the fabric. So what this is telling you is you're going to take your fabric and the fabric is going to be folded in half, and we have a fold line here, and some of the pieces are going to be placed on the fold. Most importantly, piece number 10. So you'll see 10 listed here several times. That just means that they want you to place it on the fold. You're going to pin along one edge, cut along this curved edge. So when you open it, you end up with a full circle. And don't forget, we have this little inside cutout area here. So it's a full circle with another little circle cut out in the middle. You're going to take off your pattern from this one that you cut out, and then you're going to do it 3 more times. So you end up with 4 of them. For pieces that are not cut out on the fold, since the fabric is folded in half, when you cut it out once, you end up with 2 of them. You'll notice here, this one's kind of hanging off the fold. This is because there's not enough fabric to quite get it to fit the way it needs to. So you need to cut out all your other pieces, then take what's left, open it up, and then cut piece 18, and you need it twice. The reason why some of these are dotted and some of these are white is because the white means the pattern is right side facing up. The dotted means they took the pattern and they flipped it. So the print side of the pattern is right side facing down. This is kind of on its own because they have a different setup. So after you cut out these pieces, you take whatever's left of the fabric, you fold it on the top, you fold it on the bottom. That way you can get number 8 on the fold line as well. So when you open it up, it's twice as big, and then you can fit another number 10. If we just go down a little bit further, we have the lining and we have our sew-in interfacing. So it's the same sort of setup. They only show you for 45 though, so you just have to pick what size it is. And here you'll notice it looks a little bit different. We have the fold still, but then salvage. So what they do is they take the bottom part of the fabric, they just fold it up enough so you're able to fit these pieces on the fold line, and then this is still one single layer up here. You just have to cut out your pieces twice, but you'll see one number 9 is white, one is shaded. They want you to have 2 pieces of number 9, but they need to be opposite. So you cut one right side facing up and then you flip it so it's the opposite. Here, let's look at the sewing interfacing. Luckily, we only need to cut out 18 and they just fold it in half so you have 2 18s. The last bit of prep work we need to do before we start sewing is transferring our marks from our pattern pieces to our fabric. So these are going to look like circles and dots, and what I like to do is I always like to transfer the marks to the wrong side of the fabric. I'm going to stick a pin through my pattern and through my fabric. Here I have the wrong side of my fabric actually facing up, and wherever my pin goes in, that's where I'm going to mark with either chalk or my fabric pin. And you can see I already did mine, that's up here. Now sometimes, let me move my fabric out of the way, you'll have dots that don't have a size next to them. Like these, you only have to do your size, so I would do size 12. This circle does not have a size, so that means it's for everybody. Also, you may have triangles, you may have stitching lines, they may be squares. There's a variety of different marks. Something like this is actually just to test the measurement of something. So you don't have to mark this, but you would have to mark this. Before I start going through the directions, I always like to look at the sewing information box. This is going to tell us what our seam allowance is. It's 5/8 of an inch. So whenever they say do a seam, we're always going to assume that's the width we're going to do it at. Also, we have this key for reading the picture directions. If I just scoot this over, you can see some of the pictures here. So if it's Shaded, that means you're looking at the right side of the piece or the garment. White is going to be the wrong side. And then sort of this polka dot, that means you're looking at interfacing, and if it has these little diagonal lines, that means that you're going to be looking at the lining. Now we can start going through the directions. And normally when you're making something, you start with step 1. But in this particular case, you want to really pay attention because the step 1 starts for views A and B, not for dress C, which we're doing. So you're going to have to go through until you see the directions start for view C. You'll notice down here, you'll see a C, but this is actually for the cup size. So this is still dress A and B, but if you're doing the cup size C and D. So it can get very confusing. You definitely want to pay attention. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the directions and then I'm going to demonstrate what you need to do for each direction. In our particular case, since we're doing dress C, we're actually going to start with step number 27. Step 27, for AB cup, stitch dart in bodice front, press down. Now this portion is for if you're doing a AB cup size. If you're doing the size CD cup size, then you're going to start with step 28, but they're essentially the same. And I'm going to show you on piece number 12, so the AB cup, but then I'll explain the difference. So if you're doing a different size, you can just follow along with us. The first thing that you're going to do is, so I'm working with piece number 12, and there's 2 pieces of 12 in your fabric. If you're doing the CD cup, then of course you're going to be working with piece number 13. You'll see here we have a dart. Now it's broken up according to size, so you just have to find your size and then draw the dart for that size. And you can see my dart here. So all you're going to do is, I'm just going to rotate this, it's a little bit easier for me to do it. You're going to take this portion of the dart or the fabric and you're going to fold it in half. So you're just folding the dart in half because what you're trying to do is take this line and meet it with this line here. And you're doing this on the wrong side of the fabric. So usually I like to start at the point of the dart. Grab my straight pins here. And you're going to place a pin at the very end, and I like placing my pins so that they're going perpendicular to where my fold is going to be. And then I just kind of work my way outward, just folding it. And then I'm going to stick a pin in one side. I just go straight through. And then I flip it over. And if my straight pin is coming out on the line on the other side, which mine is, then that means they match. So then I could go ahead, stick in my pin to hold it. And we'll look at it a little bit closer when we get to the machine, because what we're going to be doing is stitching right on our dart line here. So it'll be a little bit easier for you to see. And then I'm going to do it again. So I fold it, take my pin, stick it straight through, check the other side to see if my pin is going through my line. And if it is, then I can go ahead, stick my pin in. So it's going perpendicular. So you see, all we're doing is just pinching this one area where the dart lines are. Here you can see a little bit better one side of my dart line. So now I'm just going to stitch right on that line. I'm starting at the widest point of the dart, and I'm just using a regular width stitch. Don't forget to back stitch. And just follow right along there. And if you're using a delicate fabric, like I'm using chiffon, you may want to change your needle to a sharp needle and use a brand new one so we don't have to worry about any snagging. Because this fabric tends to be slippery, I tend to use a little bit more pins than I normally do with other fabric, just to make sure everything stays into place. So I'm working to that point. We're almost getting to the end here. Now, instead of doing a back stitch at the point of the dart, I'm just going to stitch right off the fabric, because sometimes if you do a back stitch, you end up getting a little bubble right there at the end of the dart, and we don't want that. So we're gonna do a knot by hand. So I'll show you what I mean once I get to there, which I'm getting close. So This pin marks the end of my dart. I'm just going to remove it. And as I get to the end, I'm just going to sew right off the fabric like that. And then when I pull it out, I make sure that I leave enough thread on here so that I'll able to make a loop. But we'll actually switch to a table so I can show you how to tie it and then also what to do with your dart after you finish sewing it. This is what my dart looks like right now. So you just pinched your fabric and then you stitched it. So what you're going to do is, this is the part where we stitched off. And you can see I still have my thread pretty long. And all I'm going to do is, you're going to loop the thread and then you're going to take the end, you're going to put it through your loop, and then you're just going to pull the end. We're just trying to get the knot as close to the edge of the fabric as we can. Once you have the knot, you can go ahead, trim it off. If you're doing the A-B cup, you're going to take your dart and you're going to press it so it's going down towards the bottom of the bodice. If you're doing the C-D cup, you're going to take your dart, you're going to trim off this folded edge. So you're still leaving 5/8 of an inch on each side of the end of the dart here. So you're just trimming off the top. And that's going to open up this dart so we no longer have a fold here, and you're going to press the dart open. So then that's going to take care of step 28. Step 29, stitch dart in bodice back, press toward neck edge. So now we're going to be taking care of the dart, which is in our bodice back. This is piece number 15, and we're going to be doing the darts at the shoulder seam. Again, out of piece 15, you should have cut 2 out of your fabric, so we're going to be doing this twice. You can see the dart up here. You just need to do the one that's for your size. So I would do size 12 and then draw the lines upward. And you can see I already have it done on my fabric. Now when you're doing your darts, you always do it to the wrong side of your fabric. So all I'm going to do, just like before, you're going to take the dart area, you're going to pinch the fabric because we're trying to meet this line with this line. And you're just going to pin it till you get to the point of the dart. Then you're going to sew it starting at the widest point, stitching along the dart line on one side, stitching off the fabric when you get to the point, and then you're going to hand tie your knot. And I actually already have one done. So this is the other side of my bodice back. Here's my dart right here. So all you're going to do is you're going to take your dart and you're going to press it toward the neckline area. This is the neckline, this area is the armhole, and this is the shoulder area. So you're just going to take it, press it to the neckline. On the other one, it's going to be pressed in this direction because it's always the opposite. Step 30, stitch bodice front to bodice back at shoulders and sides. So now we're going to be pairing up one bodice front to one bodice back. All you need to do, this is the bodice front, so I'm laying it right side facing up. I'm taking a bodice back and then lying it on top of my bodice front. The right sides are together, so I did right side down for the bodice back. And you want to make sure that they're matching. So that means that the armhole of the bodice back is in the same spot as the armhole for the bodice front. So if they're both on the same side, then that means they go together. What you're matching up is the shoulder area, so that's up here. You're going to go ahead and pin these 2 areas, making sure that the edges match, and you also have a single notch that matches. And then you're going to do the side, which is this side underneath the armhole. Let me just move this down a little bit. So you're going to make sure the edges match here, and then also your double notch matches. So I'm going to go ahead, pin these 2 areas, and again you're doing this twice because we have another set of front and back of our bodices, and then you're going to stitch a 5/8 seam allowance here and a 5/8 seam allowance up here. Because my fabric is on the more delicate side, I like to actually, when I do a seam, use a shorter stitch width or length. So what that means is the length of my stitches are normally 2.5, and I just change it to a 2. So my stitches are a little bit smaller when I'm doing my seams. Don't forget to backstitch at the beginning and end of your stitch because we want to make sure that our seams stay in place and they don't come out. And then after you finish stitching all your seams, you're going to go ahead and press those seams open. Step 31. Stay stitch inner curved edge of neck flounce, reinforce through small circle, clip to circle. To hem outer edge of flounce, stitch 1/2 inch from raw edge, turn in and press edge alongside stitching as shown. Trim very close to stitching, turn again along trimmed edge, stitch into place. We're going to be working on the neck flounce pieces. So this is piece number 16. You should have cut 2 out of your fabric. I have 1 right here. All they want you to do, I mean, there's many parts to this one step, so we're going to take one part at a time. The first thing you're going to do is stay stitch this inner curve here. So from this point to this point, you're going to stitch a regular width stitch, and you're going to do it a 1/2 inch from the raw edge all the way around the inner curve. Don't forget to back stitch on both sides. Sometimes when stitching with chiffon, it can be a little bit difficult, especially if you're just sewing a single layer of fabric, to feed evenly underneath your foot through your machine. So what I like to do, one trick is, I just cut strips of tissue paper. This is just regular tissue paper that I just purchased at the store. And I place it underneath my fabric I'm stitching, so it's between the fabric and the machine base. And that'll help it feed through the machine a little bit easier. And then once you finish stitching, you can go ahead and just rip the tissue paper off. On the inner curve, you're going to have a mark for your size, which I already transferred to my fabric right here. So at this point, they just want you to reinforce this area where your mark is. So you can start, I would say, about 1/4 inch from one side of it, stitching at the 5/8 line. You're just going to stitch right through your mark and stop maybe 1/4 inch past that. You're not going very far. Just this area, basically, you're just doing a little straight stitch. And let me show you the one I already have done. So here's my mark. I stitched, well, actually my stitching is right above my mark. What I'm going to do now, because we have 2 rows of stitches, we have our stay stitch here, and this is our reinforcing stitch here. All I'm going to do is clip a notch, so that's our little inverted triangle, to my stitches at my mark here. So you're going to be cutting through your stay stitch, which is fine. Just don't cut through your reinforcing stitches at the mark. Right where our mark is, because this is going to help later on. So you just have a little notch like this. Next, on both our neck flounce pieces, what we're going to do is finish this outer curve raw edge area. So what you're going to do to start off with, a 1/2 inch from the raw edge, you're going to do a regular stitch, just like we did with the stay stitch. So it's a 1/2 inch in, you back stitch on both sides, and you stitch the whole outer curve area, because we did the inner curve with the stay stitch. Now we're taking care of the outer curve. So after you do your 1/2 inch, you can have the wrong side facing up. You're going to fold over from the right side to the wrong side, and you're going to fold up so that your stitches end up right above your fold line. You can just barely see my stitches right there, and here's my fold line right here. So you're just seeing the stitches peeking out. Then you're going to press it in that way, and I've already actually started on this side. So you can see it's all pressed up, and my stitches are on this side. Then you're going to take your scissors, and very carefully, you're actually going to cut most of this raw edge off. Be careful, we're not cutting into this, just the raw edge. You're going to cut, so you're leaving about 1/8 inch. You want to cut pretty close to where your stitches are. We're leaving just a little bit on there. So again, on the whole outer edge, go ahead and trim it after you press it. After you finish trimming your hem, the next thing you're going to do is you're just going to turn it over one more time. So now you're going to have a fold on the top and the fold in the bottom, and that raw edge is now enclosed. To make it a little bit easier when you're trying to hold this into place, I like to just pin it into place. And I'm going to do this all the way around, the outer curve only. And I've already started over here, so you can see this is all pinned. So now we're going to take it to our machine, and we're going to stitch right along the top fold line. I'm going to go ahead and sew that top fold line of my hem. So that's going to finish that raw edge. And you can see I'm using my tissue paper again. It definitely helps it run a lot smoother as it's going through my machine. It just makes it a whole lot easier. So I'm just going to continue doing this till the whole thing is hemmed up, and we have 2 of these, so you're going to have to do it for both. Step 32, finish back edge of flounce in same manner. So all you're going to be doing on your flounce pieces, you'll have one flat edge. This is the center back area. So just like you did on the part where you finished your hem, you're going to stitch a 1/2 inch from the raw edge. Then with the wrong side facing up, you're going to fold over so that your stitches are right next to that fold line. You're going to press it, you're going to trim the raw edge, so you're leaving just a little bit, and then you're going to turn it over again and stitch on the fold line at the top. And I've already done this one. This is the one that's on the other side. So once you have those complete, we can then move on to the next step. Step 33, pin flounce to bodice, right sides up, matching notches, triangles, and back edge to center back. Base clipping as necessary. So now we're going to be attaching our finished flounce pieces to the neckline of our bodice. So remember, we stitched the front bodice to the back bodice, and we have 2 of those sets. Now this is one of them, and I just turned it sideways. So this is the bottom of the front bodice. This is the front center, the neckline, and if I went this way, this would be the back neckline here. So it's just going to make it a little bit easier. Now you'll notice there'll be marks. We have a large circle down here, a small circle right here. You should have triangles right at the shoulder seam, and these same marks are going to be on your flounce. So I have this right side facing up. The neck flounce is also going to be right side facing up, because we want to make sure that when we're looking at our dress, we're looking at the right side of the flounce and the right side of our bodice. At the very bottom, I have a large circle. This is going to match this circle, and I'm going to make sure that the raw edge meets the raw edge of the bodice. So I'm going to start pinning these into place. We also have notches. I have a single notch right here. This is going to match the single notch right here. Now you'll notice as you're pinning, sometimes things won't perfectly line up. So what they're saying is sometimes you have to clip into the raw edge of the flounce to open it up in order to make it fit a little bit better. So what this means, if I'm pinning right here and I just need to move this over a little bit more, you're not going to cut into your stay stitch, but I can just do a single little cut like this in this area, because that's the area I need to open up. Now when I pin this, I can just pull it out a little bit more, and now my notches line up. So you may have to do that throughout as you're pinning the flounce. Again, we have our single mark right here. This is going to match the single mark right here. Again, you may have to cut into it to make sure that everything lines up. Be sure not to cut into the stay stitching though. And then you're going to come up along the neckline. I have another single notch that I'm matching. I'm just going to move this a little bit more over here. I'm coming to the shoulder seam where I have my triangle. I have a triangle here as well. So I'm going to make sure that those match. And then whatever's left past the triangle, that goes with the back neckline. Now this edge is not going to come all the way to the edge of your back. It should be short about 5/8 of an inch, because we're going to end up sewing our center back seam anyways, and we don't want the ruffle to get caught into that. So I would measure 5/8 of an inch, pin your back there, and then clip in little notches if you need to spread it out to make sure everything else matches. So you're going to pin all this raw edge, and you're going to do it for both sets. So I have this flounce, and then I have my other flounce, which I'm going to match with my other set. And then you're going to baste these 2 pieces together. A basting stitch is going to be the largest stitch on your machine. We're just tacking these 2 pieces together. So it doesn't matter where you do it. You could do it at the 1/2 inch, or you can do it at the 5/8. I'm going to go ahead and do it at the 1/2 inch. But you don't have to worry about doing any back stitching. It's just a really quick stitch to hold them together. Step 34, pin bodice sections together at center front, stitch from lower edge to small circle. So now we're going to be taking our 2 front bodice pieces and we're going to be stitching them together. And we're going to be doing that at the center front line. So again, this is the bottom of my bodice, this is the center front line, and this is the start of the neckline. So what I'm going to do is I have one side, right side facing up. I'm going to take my other front bodice piece and it's going to go right side facing down, so the 2 right sides are together. And all you're doing is just matching from the bottom to the area where you have your small dot. I have one here and then I have one here. So your fabric should actually go straight, come to a point, and then kind of go at an angle. So that's the point where you're going to want to match. So I'm going to start pinning these 2 pieces together. Remember, you're matching the raw edge and we're matching these single notches here. Once you have it all pinned, you're going to stitch your 5/8 seam allowance from the bottom, stitch up until you get to your small dot up here, and then you can go ahead and back stitch at that point and not go any further. Step 35, gather lower edge of bodice, ending gathers 1.5 inches from back edges. So at the bottom of our bodice, you're going to do 2 rows of basting stitches. You're going to do 1 at the 5/8 inch mark, and then you're going to do 1 at the 3/8 inch mark. You're going to make sure though that you start 1.5 inches in from the back, center back. Same thing on this side. So I'd measure 1.5 inches, then I would go ahead, do 1 set of basting stitches, and remember you don't have to do any back stitches, and then you're going to stop 1.5 inches before you get to this edge. And then I'm going to go start again, but this time at the 3/8 line, and do my second row of stitches. Step 36, for A-B cup, stitch dart and bodice front lining, press down. So now we're going to be replicating what we just did with our main fabric with our lining pieces. So we're going to grab our 2 lining pieces for our bodice front. So that's going to be 12 if you're doing the A-B cup, or 13 if you're doing the C-D cup. You have your dart, which you should have transferred also to your lining pieces. And you're going to create the dart in the same manner. So you have your 2 lines that you pinch together or bring together, you stitch along that line. For those doing the A-B cup, you're going to take the dart and you're going to press it down to the bottom of the bodice. For those doing the C-D cup, you're going to follow steps 37, which means you cut off the top of the fold, so then you can go ahead and press the dart open. Step 38, stitch dart in bodice back lining, press toward neck edge. You're going to be taking piece 15 of your 2 lining pieces, and we're going to now create the shoulder dart. Same sort of thing as we did before. You're going to pinch the dart area, you're going to stitch on your line. Don't forget to hand tie the knot, and we're always doing our darts to the wrong side of your fabric, and then you're always going to press them towards the neckline. Step 39, stitch bodice front lining to bodice back lining at shoulders. So now we're going to match up one of our front lining pieces with one of our back lining pieces. Place them so the right sides are together, and you're making sure that the armhole is in the same area. So you're going to sew your 5/8 seam allowance at the shoulder here, making sure that the notch matches up and the sides match up. You're also going to go ahead and sew the side seam, making sure the bottom, the top right here, and the double notch matches up, and you're going to sew your 5/8 seam allowance. Step 40, stitch lining sections together at center front from lower edge to small circle. So this is just like what we did with our main fabric. You're looking at the center front of your lining, and this again is the neckline, and this is the bottom, and I have it right side facing up. I'm going to grab my other set, the front bodice sewn to the back bodice, and I'm going to line them up right sides together. You're going to pin just this section only and do your 5/8 seam allowance from the bottom here, and then stop when you get to this dot. Step 41, gather lower edge of lining, ending gathers 1.5 inches from back edges. You're going to do your 2 rows of basting stitches or gathering stitches at the bottom portion of our bodice for our lining. Again, you're starting 1.5 inches from each side, and you're going to do 1 at the 5/8, 1 at the 3/8, no back stitching. Step 42, pin lining to bodice, right sides together, matching seams and center, stitch neck edge, trim. We're now going to be attaching our main bodice piece with our lining bodice piece, and they're going to be attached at the neckline here. So I have this right side facing up. I'm going to grab my lining now, and it's going to be right side down because I want the right sides to be together. And again, I'm just matching up the neckline, so starting here at one of my back bodices, making sure the raw edges match, making sure all my notches match, and the center is going to match as well. I'm going to pin this because we're going to do a 5/8 seam allowance. Now I just want to point out that because these are being stitched together, right sides together, we're eventually going to flip it out. So what this means is once I finish my dress, and because I'm using a very translucent organza type fabric here, once my dress is completed, the wrong side of my lining is going to be coming through my fabric. This is just something to be aware of. So what this means is you really want to make sure, if you use a light color fabric like mine, that your lining looks the same on both sides. You really can't tell the difference. Also, there are going to be seams showing through. So what I'm doing as I'm sewing this, when I sew a seam, now you can just sew your seam and press them open, that's fine, that's up to you. But for me, I don't want them to be distracting as it's coming through this fabric. So I'm trying to make them as small as possible. So after I sew a seam, I then go back with my machine and I do an overcast stitch right next to my seam line. Then I trim it right on top of that. So my seam is as small as possible. Now I'm sewing it shut, which is fine, and then I'm pressing it to one side, mostly to the back. So I'm doing it for my lining, but I'm also doing it for my fabric as well, just so everything is consistent. So that's entirely up to you if you want to do like I'm doing. But for right now, all I'm going to do is I'm going to sew this neckline, and even if you don't do a finishing seam like me, you're still going to want to trim your seam allowance after you finish. Step 43, turn lining to inside, understitch, press. So I went ahead, turned my lining to the inside of my bodice. I'm still looking at the right side of my bodice fabric, and the lining is now on the inside. Now you'll notice it doesn't stay in there very well. It keeps wanting to pop out, which is why we're going to do an understitch. So to do an understitch, you're not putting the bodice where it was before. You're just pulling out the bodice to separate it from your main fabric. Your seam allowance that you just created and trimmed, this is still going to be pressed closed, so you're not pressing this part open. And it's going to be pressed so it's underneath the lining section. So I can feel it with my thumb that the seam allowance is under there. Then we're going to go to our machine, and we'll go to the machine and take a little bit of a closer look. And you're going to stitch right next to the seam line on the lining side, and you're only going through your lining and the seam allowance. So the seam allowance is going to be stitched to the underside of the lining, and you're just getting as close to the seam line as you can, and you're doing that for the whole neckline area. Here you can see a little bit easier. So I'm just making sure that I'm keeping my stitching on the side of my lining, but you want to stay close to the seam line. You just don't want to cross over into your main fabric. And I have them pulled in two different directions because I want to make sure I don't get any of the other part of my lining caught or my fabric caught. It's just this part of the lining plus the seam allowance underneath. And I'm just doing a regular stitch, and I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and end of my stitch. Step 44, baste lining to bodice at armhole. Here is one of my armholes. So all you're doing is you're taking the raw edge of your lining, the raw edge of your fabric, you're matching them up, and you're matching all your notches and seams and stuff. Go ahead and pin them, and you're gonna baste all the way around the whole armhole. We're not stitching the front to the back. Obviously we want our armhole to stay open. You're just kind of tacking together your main fabric with your lining. Step 45, gather upper edge of sleeve between small circles, gather lower edge of sleeve between small circles. We're going to be working on our sleeves now. So this is pattern piece number 17, and you should have cut 2 out of your fabric. Now you'll notice a series of marks. We have small dots up here at the top. You have a large circle right at the cap of the sleeve, at the very center of the cap. And then we have 2 small circles down here at the bottom. So these are the marks they're referring to. And we're going to be doing 2 sets of gathering stitches. And remember, these are the basting stitches. So they're the largest stitch in your machine, no back stitching. And basically what you're going to be doing is you're going to be starting at 1 small circle here at the top. And you're going to be doing a basting stitch at the 5/8, stopping when you get to the other small circle. Then you're going to go to the 3/8, starting again here and finishing when you get to the smaller circle. So you're just going from one circle to the other. You can ignore this one in the middle for right now. Then you're doing the exact same thing for these 2 small dots down here. So you're starting here, doing a basting stitch, 5/8 line, and then starting again at the 3/8 line and doing another set of basting stitches. Step 46, stitch sleeve seam. You're going to take each of your sleeves, and you can see my gathering stitches at the top and the bottom here. You're going to have your sleeve right side facing up. This area and this area need to line up because this is going to be our underarm seam. So I'm going to fold it in half like this. Now the right side is together, and line up the short end right here, making sure the single notch matches and the edges. And you're going to go ahead and do your 5/8 seam allowance. Step 47, base interfacing to wrong side of cuff. So this is piece 18. This is the cuff, so you need to cut 2 out of your fabric, 2 out of the sew-in interfacing. All you're going to do, it's very simple. You're going to take your sew-in interfacing, you're going to pair it with one of your fabric cuff pieces. Make sure that lines up, and you're doing it, the interfacing goes to the wrong side of the fabric. Then all you're going to do is pin around the edges because you're going to baste around all 4 sides, attaching the interfacing to your fabric. And I usually do it at the 1/2 inch mark all the way around. Step 48, stitch ends of cuff together. So you're going to take each one of your cuffs, you're going to lie them so the right side is facing up. My interfacing is on the back here. And you're going to take this short end, meet it with this short end. So the right side of the cuff is now on the inside. You're going to pin this edge and do a 5/8 seam allowance. Step 49, turn in seam allowance of cuff edge without small circles. Press, trim press seam allowance to 3/8 of an inch. So you're going to take each of your cuffs, and you'll notice on one side they'll have the single notch. So we're actually going to be working on the opposite side. So this side down here, all you're going to be doing is with the wrong side on the outside, you're going to turn over this edge 5/8 of an inch. Let me grab my sewing gauge so I can start measuring this. And go ahead and pin it, and you're going to press it. So it's going to be press 5/8 of an inch all the way around. After you press it, you're then going to go back around and you're going to trim the raw edge. So just the raw edge only. So you're only leaving 3/8 of an inch left. Step 50, pin cuff to sleeve, matching symbols and seams. Adjust gathers, baste, stitch, trim, press seam toward cuff. So here's our cuff, here's our sleeve. We're now going to be attaching the 2. So you're going to want to make sure that your sleeve is right side out, your cuff is wrong side out, because we're going to stick the bottom of the sleeve into the cuff, and that way we can ensure that it's going to be right side together. The seam in your sleeve should match the seam of your cuff and you're matching up the raw edge with this raw edge here in the cuff. So not the side that you folded up, but the other side now that has the single notch. So I'm bringing it down here. All right, so this is the part that has my seam in the sleeve, and I'm matching up with the seam of the cuff. And I'm going to pin it. Now you may notice that your sleeve is bigger than your cuff, and it's meant to be that way because we're going to be using, remember down here we stitched our 2 rows of gathering stitches. We're going to be pulling these to help ease the bottom of the sleeve to the cuff. And it's still going to have some ruffles and some gathering going on, which is fine because that's going to allow this type of sleeve to kind of puff out a little bit. So I'm matching up now my single notch with my single notch. And then also you'll have the small marks or dots, and you can match that up as well. So I'm matching up these major points, and then I'm going to worry about the gathering. All right, so after we pin this, all right, so I only have this much in my cuff. If I was to flip this, you'll see I have this much of my sleeve that I need to fit in this area. So this is where I'm gonna pull the threads. Let me actually move this out of the way. All right. So I have my threads for my gathering stitches. I'm just going to pull them. Let me turn it this way. And it's going to start gathering this area. And once it starts to fit, let me fix this, then you can start pinning it. Now normally what you want to do is you really don't want to cause any wrinkles or gathering, but because of this type of sleeve, you're definitely going to have wrinkling and you're going to have gathering, which is fine. I mean, there's no way to get around it because it's so much here. What you want to make sure though is that in the area that you're gathering it, you just kind of distribute the gathering evenly. So it's not all just bunched up in one area. It's just distributed over a period of the fabric. So that way it looks a little bit more even. So then I need to do the same thing on this side as well. So I'm matching up my small mark with a small mark on my sleeve. And kind of the center point is going to be where my single notch is. This point with the single notch, this is not moving at all. So now I have all this fabric to fit into this area. So again, I'm going to be pulling my gathering threads to gather the fabric, and then I'm just going to kind of distribute the gathering so it fits evenly and it doesn't look like it's all bunched up in one area. Once you have this whole thing pinned, you can go ahead, take it to your machine, you're going to baste, and then that way it's going to hold it without pins. And then after you baste it, you can go ahead, stitch at your 5/8 seam line, and you're going to trim your seam allowance. You're just leaving a little bit, and you can just move if you move the cuff like this, you're going to want to make sure that your seam allowance stays underneath the cuff. So you don't have to press it open, you just press all your seam allowance so it's underneath the cuff. Step 51, turn cuff to inside along fold line, press, slip stitch, pressed edge over seam. So you're going to be taking your cuff now, and you're going to take the folded edge and you're going to fold it up so that it covers up your seam allowance and all that raw edge right there. So it's just going to come to the top of that seam allowance. And we're going to pin it into place. And after it's all pinned, you're going to press it so we get a nice crisp edge here on the bottom of the cuff. We're going to get a little closer because then I'm going to show you how we're going to slip stitch this into place. The slip stitch is done by hand, and you should use a matching thread. I'm going to go ahead and use a contrasting one so it'll be a little bit easier for you to see. So what we're going to be doing is you have your fold of the cuff, and then you have your seam allowance right here, which is on the sleeve. So I'm just going back and forth between the two sides. I'm going to start here at the cuff, and I'm going to come up right so my needle comes up where the fold is. But I'm starting on the inside of the fold because I want my knot to get tucked in there and then to stay hidden. I'll just tuck that in. There we go. And then I'm going to grab a little bit of the fabric. You can see I'm just doing it right where the top of my seam allowance is. And you're going to pull it. And then I'm going to go back to the fold of the cuff, then to the seam allowance, then to the cuff, and then to the seam allowance. So again, just going back and forth. And you're doing this all the way around the whole thing, and you're going to do it for both sleeves. Step 52, edge stitch upper and lower edge of cuff. So now we're just finishing the look of our cuff. All you're going to do is all the way around, you're going to stitch right along the top of the cuff, right next to the seam line, and you're going to do the same thing on the bottom of the cuff. So you're going right next to that fold there, and you're just doing a regular stitch, and you're going all the way around both cuffs. The edge stitch is a finishing stitch, so we just want our cuff to look finished, and it doesn't matter if you start at the top or the bottom of the cuff. I'm going to go ahead and start at the top, and you can see that I'm going right up here, right next to the top of the cuff, and I'm just going all the way around, and then I'll cut my threads and I'll start on the bottom. Step 53, with right sides together, pin sleeve into armhole, placing large circle at shoulder seam, adjust gathers, baste, stitch, stitch again 1/4 inch away in seam allowance, trim close to stitching, press seam allowances flat, turn seam toward sleeve. All we're doing now is attaching our sleeve to our bodice. So I have my sleeve right side out, and then I'm looking at the inside of my bodice. So I'm looking at my lining. I'm going to stick the sleeve inside an armhole, cuff first. So I'm left with the cap of my sleeve, which is lining up with my armhole here, and they should be right sides together. Now, to make sure you have the right sleeve in the right armhole, you're going to look at the notches. So on this side, I have a double notch. On this side, I have a single notch. So the sleeve should match up. So here I have a single notch. I'm looking over here, I have a double notch. So it's perfect. If they weren't matching up, it just means I need to put the sleeve in the other armhole. It's the only thing. So I can start pinning this and making sure that the underarm seam of the sleeve lines up with the side seam of the bodice. At the very top of the cap of the sleeve, let's pull this out here, you're going to have a large circle. This is going to line up with the shoulder seam of the bodice. You also have two small marks on each side. So I have a small dot over here. I have a small dot on my bodice. So I'm going to line that up. And it's the same thing on this side as well. I have another small dot that I need to line up. Now you'll notice, just like when we did the cuff, you're going to have more fabric in your sleeve than you are going to be able to fit into this one area. So just like before, you're going to pull your gathering stitches. It's going to cinch this up. Now you're just going to have the situation where there's so much fabric that you're cinching up here that it's not going to lie flat. There are going to be some ruffling and some wrinkles here, which is fine. You just want to make sure that you take the gathering and you distribute it evenly again, so it's not all bunched up in one section, and just pin it best you can. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side as well, so everything looks even. After it's pinned all the way around, you're going to baste it into place. Then you can stitch at your 5/8 seam allowance. You're going to go up 1/4 of an inch and stitch again. So you're going to have 2 rows of stitches, one at the 5/8, one at the 3/8, because this is going to be an area that has a lot of wear and tear. We're just going to make sure that the sleeve's not going to come out. After you do your second row of stitches, you can trim your seam allowance so that it's close to the 3/8, and we're going to keep the seam allowance closed. You're not going to press it open, and then you're going to press the whole seam allowance toward the sleeve. Step 54, stitch dart and skirt front, press toward center. We're moving on to the skirt now. So we're first going to work with piece number 8. This is a skirt front, and it should have been cut on the fold. So when we unfolded it, it was a piece that was twice as big, and it's just one. You'll notice that there's a dart at the top, so these marks should have been transferred to our fabric. And you're going to have a dart here and a dart here. You create your dart in the same manner that we did the bodice. So it's the same sort of thing where you just pinch the two sides together and you stitch until you get to the point. Once you've created your darts, you're going to press them towards the center of the skirt front so they're facing each other. Step 55, stitch dart and skirt back, press towards center, stitch center seam and skirt back from lower edge to large circle. Now we're dealing with piece number 9. This is a skirt back. You should cut 2 out of your main fabric. And again, it has the dart at the top. So in both of your skirt back pieces, you're going to create the dart, and then you're going to press it toward the center back. And you know the center back because one side is going to have the double notch, one side does not. So the side that does not have the double notch, that is the center back, and that's the direction you press your dart in. Now we're going to be placing the 2 back pieces together. So once it's pressed, I'm going to flip this over now so it's right side facing up. I'm going to take my other back piece. So it's right side together. And now my center back seam is on this side. So I'm going to pin these 2 pieces from the bottom along the side, matching the raw edges, and you'll have a large circle. This is where you're going to stop. So you're going to stop pinning here, but you're going to stitch your 5/8 seam allowance from here down to the bottom. Step 56, stitch skirt front and skirt back at sides. So here's my back. This is the seam that I just created, and it's open above that large circle. I have it right side facing up. I'm now going to grab my front, lay it down so it's right sides together. And you're going to be matching up the side seams. So that's going to be this side over here with the double notch, and the same thing this side over here, which is a little hard for me to reach, so I'll fix that after. And you're going to be pinning these 2 sides from top to bottom and stitch your 5/8 seam allowance, and on this side as well. To finish up step 56, we need to prepare skirt lining in same manner as skirt. So now we're just going to do the same exact thing we've just done for a skirt in our lining. So you're going to take the darts in your front and you're going to press them towards the center. Then you're going to do the same thing with your back lining pieces. Create the darts and press them towards the center back. Next, take both your back pieces, put them right side to right side. You're going to line up the center back seam, so that's the side that does not have the double notch. So from the bottom up to the large circle, you're going to do a 5/8 seam allowance, and this part above the circle is going to remain open. Lastly, put your front lining and back lining together, right side together, and you're going to sew your side seams here and on the side as well. Steps 57 and 58 are for hemming dress A, so we're going to skip on to step number 59. Reinforce lower edge of skirt through circles, clip 2 circles. You'll notice on the bottom of your skirt patterns you'll have stitching lines, and you only need to transfer the one that's for your size to your fabric of your skirt. You can see mine here. These are just a couple of examples. There's 4 in total. Now all you need to do, I'm going to move this one out of the way, is you're just going to stitch right on that line, and you're just doing a regular stitch. Don't forget to back stitch because we're going to reinforce this area. You're not stitching anything together, it's just a single layer. So I'm going to do it for this one, I'm going to do it for this one, and I'm going to do it for my other 2. Now after you finish stitching it, you're just going to clip a notch to the center of that, and you're not clipping your stitches, you're just clipping to them. Step 60, stitch flounce sections together. So now we're going to be working with piece number 10, and this is the one where on the straight edge, you should have placed it on the fold. So when you cut it out, you end up with a full circle with a hole in the middle. Now we need to open up the circle so we can be able to stitch all these flounce sections together. So to do that, we're going to cut with our scissors from one side, from one outer side to the inner circle here. Only one side. So I'm going to cut here, but I'm going to leave this side intact. So we're going to be able to open up the circle here. So to do that, I'm just going to use my pattern as a guideline. I'm going to grab my ruler because I want to make sure I do it straight down the middle. And I do it straight. And then I'm just going to draw a line. And with this line, I'm going to cut right along it. And then I'm going to do this for all 4 pieces. Next, I'm going to grab one of my sections, and you can see the straight edge here, and I'm making sure that's right side facing up. I'm going to grab one of my other flounce sections, and I'm going to match up one of the straight edges with this one now. So you can see they're lining up, and I'm making sure it's right side together, and I'm going to stitch a 5/8 seam allowance. Then I'm going to grab the straight edge on the second section, and I'm going to match it up with a 3rd flounce and then a 4th. And then the last one, the 4th one, is going to end up meeting up with this side right here. So you actually sew one big loop with all 4 of them stitched together. Step 61, stay stitch inner curved edge of flounce, reinforce through small circles, clip 2 circles. We're looking at the inner circle of the flounce. So what you're going to do is you're going to do a stay stitch, which means you're going to stitch all the way around, and you're going to do that a 1/2 inch from the edge. Then you should have marks on your flounce, and it should be next to the fold line right where that inner circle is. And you can see I have one right here. Now if you're unsure, if you can't find your mark, it's basically going to be opposite side of the small inner circle, opposite of where you slashed. So at these areas, you're just going to stitch through these marks at the 5/8 mark. So you can start about a 1/4 inch on each side, and then you can stop a 1/4 inch on the other side of it. So you're just going through it, and then once you finish stitching those, you're going to cut to your dot. So there should be 4 of these, and you're making sure you can go ahead and cut through your stay stitch, but don't cut through your reinforcing stitch at the 5/8 mark. Step 62, to hem outer edge of flounce, stitch 1/4 inch from raw edge, turn in and press edge alongside stitching as shown. Trim very close to stitching, turn again along trimmed edge, stitch in place. So now we're going to be hemming our flounce just like we did with the next flounce. It's the same exact thing. The only difference is from the raw edge, you're stitching in a 1/4 inch away from the seam. So just a little bit, and you're going to do this all the way around the whole outer bottom perimeter of the flounce. After you stitch it, you're then going to fold it up, and this is the wrong side, so I'm folding up to the wrong side so that your stitching ends up, let me do it over here. It's a little bit easier to see my stitching. Your stitching ends up right next to that fold line. So you can see it on the inside of the flounce. You're going to press it, and then you're going to trim, so you're leaving just a little bit of fabric of the raw edge above your stitching. So I'm just trimming most of this off and just leaving a little bit. Now what you're going to do is after you trim this, you're going to take what's left, and it's still folded up, and you're just going to fold it over again. So now that stitching is underneath. So now you have a fold on top and a fold on bottom. And then you're just going to stitch right on that top fold line, creating a very narrow hem. Step 63, pin flounce to skirt, right sides together, matching seams on flounce to center front, center back, and side seams, clipping flounce as necessary, baste, stitch, press seam allowance towards skirt. Our flounce is going to be attached to the bottom of our skirt, so you're going to have your flounce, and I have it wrong side out, and this is that inner circular area that we did our stay stitch on. So I'm going to grab my skirt, and my skirt is right side out, and I'm going to stick my skirt into my flounce so that the bottom of the skirt is up near the top of the flounce. So this is the side that has the kind of scallop design. You'll have 3 seams in your skirt. Each seam should match up with a seam of your flounce. So I'm going to line them up. Now there are 4 seams in your flounce, so there'll be 1 seam left over. That seam just goes in the center of the skirt front. So you just need to find the center front, and then you're going to pin a seam from the flounce in that position. So first what I like to do is, and again they're right sides together, is I like to line up all the seams. So once all the seams match and 1 seam of the flounce matches the center front area of the skirt front, I'm going to pin those areas. Then we have the area that we clipped. You can kind of see my little blue mark here. So this is where I did the reinforcing stitch, and then I clipped to my reinforcing stitch. These I'm going to match up with my skirt where I did the same thing. So this is where we did that reinforcing stitch, and then we clipped right to the middle. So then I would match those together. And there are going to be 4 of those. So 4 on the skirt, 4 on the flounce. And you're going to line up the raw edges. Okay. Then everything else in between, I'm just going to try to fit together. Now you'll notice that there may be more fabric on your skirt than there is on the flounce. So just like we did when we were trying to match up our neck flounce to our neckline, and we had the same issue, you're just going to do a little clip, and that's going to start spreading things out. So it'll make it a little bit easier. If you need to do more than one, you can do more than one. So then I'm just going to pin all the way around till the bottom of the skirt is pinned entirely to the top of the flounce. Then you're going to baste your seam. After you baste it, you can go ahead and stitch it. And then you're going to take your seam allowance and you're going to press it up towards the skirt, not towards the flounce. So then you can go ahead and pull your skirt out. So it's pulled out away from the flounce, and just take your seam allowance and press it up towards the skirt. Step 64, edge stitch skirt along seam. All you're going to do is you're going to outline the bottom of the skirt. So here's the skirt portion, this is my flounce. I'm just going to put my hand under here so it's easier to see. So you pressed up your seam so it's underneath the skirt portion. You can just see the edge of my seam right here. All you're going to do is stitch on the side of the skirt right next to the seam line, and you're attaching then the seam allowance that's underneath to the skirt fabric. You just got to be careful that you're only doing the skirt that the portion of the skirt that you're working on and the seam allowance that's underneath it. We're not accidentally sewing the skirt back to the skirt front. So you're just going to outline with your stitches right along the bottom portion of the skirt all the way around. Step 65. Reinforce lower edge of skirt lining through circles. Clip to circles. So we've already done this with our main fabric. Now we're just going to do it with our lining. On the bottom portion of the skirt, you should have these stitching lines that you transferred from your pattern. They're both on the front and the back of the skirt. All you're just going to do is just stitch along it using a regular stitch, and then you're going to clip right down the center. And I've actually already done it with this one. So stitched, and then I just did a little slit right to the center, being careful not to cut my stitches. Step 66. Stitch flounce lining sections in same manner as flounce. Make a 5/8 narrow hem on outer edge of flounce lining. Stitch flounce lining to skirt lining in same manner as skirt. So now you're going to take your lining pieces of the flounce, and you should have 4 just like we did with the skirt. On one side you're going to have your mark. On the other side you're going to cut from the inner circle to the outer circle, and you're going to do that for all 4 pieces. Then you're going to take each piece, each flounce, and you're going to line up with one straight edge. So they're basically going in the same direction, right sides together. You're going to stitch your 5/8 seam allowance, then you're going to take the other flounce and you're going to stitch it to the other one till all 4 are stitched together, so you have one singular open circle right in the middle. After all the pieces are stitched together, you'll have this inner circle like this, and you're going to stay stitch a 1/2 inch from the edge all the way around. Then where you have your marks, you're going to do your reinforcing stitch 5/8 from the edge, and you're going to clip. Like I have one right here. I just bring this more into the center. So I have a mark right here. I went ahead and I did a regular stitch 5/8 of an inch from the edge from one side to the other side going through my mark. And then I'm just going to take my scissors and just clip to my mark, being careful not to cut the reinforcing stitches. To create the hem on the flounce, what you're going to do is press up 5/8 of an inch on the wrong side on the whole outer edge of your flounce. So I'm going to measure 5/8 of an inch. You can go ahead, pin it. You're going to press it so you have a nice clean edge all the way around. After you press it, remove your pins. Take your raw edge. It's going to fold to your crease that you created when you pressed it, and then you're just going to stitch right along the top fold. To finish this up, all we need to do is attach the bottom of our skirt to the top of our flounce, and this is in the lining, and you'll notice I'm using 2 different colors. So you got to make sure that when you stick one inside the other, the one on the inside is right side out, the one on the outside is wrong side out. So then when you have them like this, they're going to be right sides together. You're going to make sure that everything matches up, all your seams and marks. And you can go ahead and start pinning them. Remember that you may have to do clips in order to spread out the flounce section so that it fits all throughout the bottom of the skirt. Now when I'm sewing it and basting it, I always like to do it looking at the skirt portion, because it has sort of the scallop design. I want to make sure that I capture that once the skirt is finished. So I pin it, and then when I'm sewing it, I just look at the skirt so I can follow along those same lines. Step 67, reinforce back lining through large circles at upper edge, clip 2 circles. So if you look at the top portion of your lining for the skirt, you're going to notice on the back you have a large circle, and then here's the other side. I just have it folded in half so you can see both at the same time. All you're going to do is do a reinforcing stitch. So this is stitching at the 5/8 mark, and you're just starting a little bit before the mark and stopping a little bit afterwards. Then you're going to clip in the area, not cutting into your stitches. Step 68, pin lining to skirt, wrong sides together, matching center front, side seams, and back edges. Stitch keeping lining free below clips. We're now going to match up our main skirt piece and our lining skirt piece, making sure that these raw edges are together. So I stick one inside the other one, and you're going to make sure that you're doing wrong side to wrong side. So if I look on the inside, I'm looking at the right side, and on the outside, I'm looking at the right side of the lining. You're going to make sure that everything lines up. That means seams, darts, notches, marks, ends, everything. When you're pinning, you're going to start at one large dot on the back. It's the same place where we did our reinforcing. So you're going to pin, and you're going to start stitching here, going in the direction of the front, come around, and you're going to stop when you get to the large circle on the other side. So everything from the large circle to this open end is going to remain free. You're not going to stitch it. Just from one circle to the other, go ahead and do your regular seam allowance. Step 69, make 1/2 inch French tack between lining and garment seams at lower edge as shown. So now we're going to be creating a French tack in order to hold together our main fabric with our lining at the top of the flounce area. So all I did is I have my garment right side out. I pull back my main fabric, so I'm looking at the seams. This is the seam that's on the flounce, and this is the seam between the flounce and the skirt, and you're looking at the same thing here in the lining. So this is the wrong side of the lining, the wrong side of the skirt. Here's the seam between the two, and then you have your seams of the flounce. So we're going to be attaching this area with this area. And this is going to help keep the lining and the main fabric together so they're not shifting as much, and when you take off your dress, the lining isn't going to come up through the skirt and basically drive you nuts. So you're going to need to get some needle and thread because we're going to hand sew this. And I'm using a contrasting thread so it'll be a little bit easier to see, but you should use a matching one. And I'm going to start down here. So this is where we have the seam. and I'm coming up underneath the raw edge, not too close to the edge because we want it to be at a pretty stable point of the fabric. And then I'm just going to go through a couple of times at the point where my thread came out, just to kind of anchor it into place. A couple times. All right, so now this is my starting point. Now I'm going to grab the same exact point on the other side of my main fabric, making sure that it's in the same position as this one. And I'm going to come through, again, just the seam allowance part. We're not going through or fully through our main fabric and not the seam allowance, because then you're going to be able to see it on the right side, and we don't want that. All right, so I'm just pulling it until I have about a 1/2 inch, because they said they want us to create a 1/2 inch tack. So then I'm going to come up right next to where I went down on this side. And then come back to this side. So the two strands are going to be pretty close together. You might have to hold this so it stays at the 1/2 inch mark. It's kind of similar to creating a thread loop. Okay? And then come back up on the lining side of the seam allowance, because now we're going to start reinforcing our thread loop. And the reason why they pick a 1/2 inch, because you don't want it too close, like we don't want these directly attached or it may cause problems later. So we give it a little room. 1/2 inch is good. All right, so now I'm down at this point. All I'm going to do is I'm going to come under the loop. I'm going to take this thread. It's going to go over my needle on the other side. And I'm just basically creating a knot at the end here. Okay, and then I just do the same thing. Come through. This goes over my needle. So I bring the needle through, create another knot that's going to go right on top of the knot I just created. So I did one knot on top of it, and I'm just going to create knot after knot after knot until I get to this end. And then you can create your final knot, and you can cut it off and do another one. So you're going to do this for each seam that you have in your flounce lining and in your main flounce. So there should be 4 total that you're doing this. Come underneath. This goes over your needle. And then creating a knot, making sure that you do one knot above the other. So you don't just work in the same spot, you're actually going forward. Step 70, open out bodice lining, pin skirt to bodice right sides together, matching center fronts, seams, and back edges. Adjust gathers, stitch, keeping lining free below clips. Press seam allowance toward bodice. Now the full dress is coming together, so we're going to be attaching our bodice to our skirt. So here's my skirt. I have it wrong side out so you can see the lining. We still have this opening over here because this opening is where the zipper is going to go. Now I'm going to grab my bodice, and my bodice is right side out. This is the top of my bodice. This is the bottom of my bodice. So it goes in top first because we want to line up the bottom of the bodice with the top of the skirt. So you're just going to put that in there. And we're going to match everything up. So right now it kind of looks like a mess. The main thing that you need to do is move your bodice lining out of the way. We don't want to deal with that right now. You're just dealing with the bodice fabric, not the lining, because we'll deal with that at a later time. All right, so this is my skirt. This is my bodice. The part where you left it open when you were sewing the skirt, remember we had this circle and we just started here, but anything between the circle and the end is open. So you can go ahead and take this part and you can move it out of the way. Because you're going to take your skirt fabric, your bodice fabric, and we're going to start pinning them together. And we want to make sure everything lines up, all the seams line up. Of course, you won't have darts in your bodice, but that's fine. Notches you're going to want to line up as well. All right, so now when we get to this point where the lining and the skirt is attached, at that portion, you can go ahead and start pinning all of it. So now I'm going to be pinning the lining, skirt, and bodice fabric together. And I'm going to go all the way around until I get to the other side. And the other side is going to look like this, where from the circle on, it's just going to be the main fabrics, and then past the circle towards the middle of it is going to be the lining attached to that as well. And you also notice that we have our gathering stitches in our bodice. So there may be portions where it's not fitting together perfectly. Go ahead and pull those gathering stitches and just kind of distribute it evenly so we can kind of cinch the bottom of the bodice so it fits the top of our skirt. Once everything is fitting and pinned, go ahead and stitch your regular seam allowance, and then we're pressing our seams toward our bodice. Step 71 is broken out into sections, so we're just going to take one section at a time. So the first one is open out bodice lining, base opening edges together along seam line above large circle as shown, keeping skirt lining free, press. All you're going to be doing is you're taking now this opening edge that we've had on the back of the bodice and the back of the skirt. Now we're going to start prepping it for our zipper. So this is the center back, this is the top, and this is the bottom of the dress here, just so you can figure out what part I'm looking at. I have the right sides together of my main fabric only. I'm pulling out the lining because I want to make sure they're not getting caught in this. I'm also making sure that my neck flounce over here stays out of the way as well. You're going to pin the two raw edges together. So this part, this is the bodice section, this is the skirt portion down here. You're going to start basting from here at the 5/8 line all the way down here until you get to this large circle down here, and then you're going to press your seams open. B, open zipper, place face down on extended seam allowance, placing zipper stop at large circle and zipper teeth on seam line. Baste in center of zipper tape, keeping garment free. So here is the basting seam I just created, and it's pressed open, and I just took this seam allowance and I extended it past the rest of the garment so there's nothing underneath this part of the seam allowance. This part has everything else underneath it. So we're just having this part be by itself because now we're going to start attaching our zipper, and this is where we're going to start. So you have your 22-inch zipper. You're going to unzip it. The side where you can see the zipper tab, that's the right side of the zipper. And then down here, you'll see a zipper stop. This is the zipper tape. The stop is actually inside that, so you want to make sure you don't confuse those. I'm going to turn it so the right side of the zipper is facing down towards my open seam. The zipper stop is going to be at where you have the end of your basting seam. So where that large circle is, that's where you're going to put the stop. The zipper teeth, we're going to get rid of this one now because we're just working on this side now. So the zipper teeth is going to go right in the middle of your seam line. So you're just going to be pinning it and making sure that everything is lining up, and you're just pinning it to this seam allowance that's hanging over here, nothing else. You're not pinning it to the garment, just this individual seam allowance that's hanging off. And I'm just going to keep going until I get to the very top. After you pin it, all you're going to do is do a basting stitch right down the middle of the tape. So you can either do that with your machine or you can do it by hand. And I'm going to go ahead and do it by hand because it just gives me a little bit more control so I can make sure that everything stays in place. C, close zipper, pull tab up, spread garment flat, baste a scant 1/4 inch from zipper teeth and across lower edge. You're going to take your zipper Go ahead, zip it up. We're now going to have it so it's going flat across the garment like this. And all you're going to do now is you're going to definitely use your zipper foot for this part. So you're going to start stitching down the zipper on the zipper tape, going through now the seam allowance and the back of your garment, so the bodice back or the skirt back. You're making sure that you're not going all the way through and you're stitching the front or the ruffle or anything else. It's just these two things. So 1/4 inch away from the teeth, you're stitching down the zipper. You're going to go past the zipper stop 1/4 inch as well. Then you're going to go across the end and then back up, still staying 1/4 inch away from the teeth. And you're going to make sure that you're doing a basting stitch, and it's probably easier if you use a contrasting thread so it shows up. I'm basting my zipper into place, and I'm just getting just below my stop. So once I get 1/4 inch past that, I'm going to leave my needle in the fabric, lift my foot, and I'm going to pivot everything. And it's hard because there is a lot of fabric to this. So you just got to do the best you can. And I'm always making sure that I don't have any extra fabric underneath my foot here, only the stuff that I need to sew. So after I line everything up, go ahead, put your foot down, stitch across, and let's fix that. Okay, there we go. And then once I get past to the other side, lift my foot again, pivot my fabric, make sure that nothing is under there that shouldn't be. And then I could put my foot and continue down the rest of the way. D. On outside, stitch along basting through all thicknesses as shown using a zipper foot. Remove basting. I flip my garment over, so now we're looking at the right side of the garment. And you can see my basting stitches here in the light green. So all I'm doing is using a regular stitch, stitching right on top of those basting stitches all the way around my zipper, and that's going to install my zipper in fully. Then I can remove all my basting stitches, including the ones that are right in the seam line, and that's going to open up my zipper. Again, you have to be careful that you don't have anything underneath your foot except for the part of the garment we're working on and the zipper tape. Step 72, turn skirt lining down, turning in opening edges to clear zipper teeth. So remainder of zipper lining to upper edge of waist seam, slip stitch to zipper tape. So now we're working on our skirt lining, and all you're going to do is on the edge, each of these, you're going to turn under, so it's going on the inside now, so that it doesn't come to overlap the zipper teeth in the middle. It's probably maybe about 1/8 inch away, because we want to make sure that our fabric is not going to get caught in the teeth. So you're going to do this all along the edge, and you're going to do it on this side as well. You can go ahead and pin it just to hold it. After you finish pinning it, you're going to make sure this top edge gets pinned to the rest of our waist seam here. And you're going to stitch now, because remember we stopped stitching here and this was all loose. So now you can go ahead and stitch from here to as close as you can get. You might not be able to get all the way to the end because the zipper gets in the way, but just as close as you can get. After you stitch this, then you're going to go ahead and slip stitch the lining to the zipper tape. So you're just going through the zipper tape only, not all the way through to the right side of the fabric. Step 73, turn bodice lining down, slip stitch back opening edges to zipper tape. Turn under seam allowance on lower edge of bodice lining, adjust gathers, lap over skirt seam allowances, slip stitch. We're doing the exact same thing that we did for our skirt lining to our bodice lining. So all you're doing is you're turning it over or turning it under in order to pin it and slip stitch the bodice lining to the zipper tape up here. So I want to make sure that my lining is now going to be on the inside of the garment. So I'm just folding it over about 5/8 of an inch. And then I'm turning it over so the line is completely on the inside. And then I'm pinning it about 1/8 of an inch away from the teeth, because again, I want to make sure that it's not going to overlap the zipper teeth. And you can see I've already pinned it on this side. So both these sides you're going to slip stitch into place just like you did for the bottom portion here. Now you'll notice that our bodice lining will overlap our skirt lining by a little bit. So when you do this part down here, you're going to turn it up about 5/8 of an inch. And you're going to do this all the way around the whole waistline, because we want to make sure when this is folded and it's stitched down, it's going to be covering all our stitches here at the waistline. So you're not going to see it. All you're going to see is a nice folded edge. And this area is going to be slip stitch as well. So you're going to slip stitch up here and then also all along the waistline. Now, like when we were attaching our bodice to our skirt, we had to adjust the gathers at the bottom of the bodice. You'll also have to do this with the lining as well, which is why we did these gathering stitches. So if you find the area is not fitting in, you're not able to match up the side seams or something, go ahead and pull those gathering stitches so you can just kind of cinch it in and make everything fit. The last step is step 74, so hook and eye to back opening edges above zipper as shown. So all we need to do is just put our hook and eye at the top, and then our dress is done. So usually I do the hook first, and this one over here, this is the hook. So it has a flat side and then it hooks up, and it gets sewn to the lining, so the inside of your garment. Once I have that sewn on, and you'll see we have the 2 hoops at the bottom, that's where you put your stitches through. Then I get the eye portion, I hook it through there, I position my eye where I would like it on the other side so it's even. Once it looks like it's going to work, this one's just all crooked, straighten that out. Okay, once it looks like it's in a good spot, then I can go ahead, unhook it, hold it with my finger, and you're going to use a needle and thread with this. So all you need to do, they're very simple to sew, is you're going to start on the outside of one little loop here, and you're going to come up on the inside. And then you're on the outside, and then you come up on the inside. So it's like doing a whip stitch, and I usually do about 5 or 6 times for each one. And after I've done that one, then I'm going to move on to this one, so both of them are stitched through. To finish up, be sure to remove any basting stitches or fabric markers. Now you have a beautiful dress that's perfect to wear to any elegant summer event. This has been Butterick 5879. Enjoy your new dress. Make sure to check out our other videos and visit ProfessorPincushion.com to view our complete library with well over 150 sewing video tutorials. New tutorials are released regularly, so make sure to subscribe to be notified of the next release. Thanks for watching!